They were a young and rising power couple. She fought her way from Harlem to the hallowed halls of Harvard.
She was on her way up.
And he was a budding songwriter, penning hits for stars at the top of the charts.
He wrote for acts such as New Edition, as well as Ryan Leslie.
Together, they seemed like a match made in heaven.
She was absolutely in love.
Until jealousy and greed turned their picture-perfect world upside down.
It was a big love triangle.
You could see the blood on the ground from where he collapsed.
My head was just spinning.
The investigation would send police on a desperate manhunt and lead them to the unlikeliest of suspects.
Love makes people do crazy things.
This story involved drugs, murder, a robbery. Things like this just don't happen in an Ivy League institution.
May 18th, 2009. It's a beautiful spring day in Cambridge, Massachusetts. At prestigious Harvard University, students are preparing for final exams. But just before 5 p.m., the stillness is shattered in an explosion of violence when gunshots ring out from the Kirkland House dormitory.
No one could have seen this coming.
It was really shocking.
Seconds later, a young African-American man stumbles from the dorm and into the path of stunned onlookers. Suffering from what appears to be a gunshot wound to the abdomen, the man slumps to the ground, a pool of blood collecting underneath him. Moments later, the first 911 calls begin pouring in. Police and paramedics race to the scene and rush the man to the nearest hospital. Word of the shooting spreads like wildfire across campus, leaving everyone wondering, how could something like this have happened at such a revered institution?
My boss told me somebody got shot at Harvard, and I looked at him like, with what, a super soaker? Because people usually don't get shot at Harvard University.
But as police comb the campus for clues, they uncover a seedy undercurrent of sex, lies, and drugs, along with a conspiracy that will threaten to take down one of Harvard's brightest stars.
This young woman was just caught in a bad situation.
Born in Harlem, New York in 1987, Brittany Smith didn't come from a life of wealth and privilege.
She had an upbringing with a single-parent household. She lived with her father. Her mother was on narcotics, and so her father predominantly raised her.
But Brittany didn't let her tough upbringing keep her down. She dreamed of one day attending an Ivy League school and worked hard to achieve it.
Brittany Smith was a very bright child. She went to a high school that had a very rigorous curriculum. Graduated from there, top of her class.
Very scholarly, loved doing volunteer work. She organized canned food drives and was an officer for her student council.
All that hard work paid off in 2005 when Brittany was accepted into one of the most prestigious institutions in the world, Harvard University.
She started in Harlem and then ended up at Harvard. Brittany was clearly somebody who was very dedicated to her education and very dedicated to her future.
But due in large part to her modest background, life at Harvard wasn't always an easy fit for Brittany.
Brittany was in a completely different world from the world that she grew up in. At Harvard, most of the students come from an upper middle class to upper class financial background. She felt quite isolated.
Even so, the gifted student did make a handful of friends at Harvard. Among those was another New York native named Shaniqua Campbell.
Hey, girl. How are you? Great. How are you? Good. How's your day? Good.
Brittany worked with Shaniqua at the Harvard Student Assistance Office, and the two became fast friends.
Shaniqua Campbell was from the Bed-Stuy neighborhood of Brooklyn, New York, and she attended a high school with an academic program that was just as rigorous as Brittany's in preparing students for the Ivy League.
But even with a friend like Shaniqua by her side, something still felt missing in Brittany's life, a man to share it with.
She's brilliant. She's got her whole life ahead of her, and she just has this one piece of her that's just not being fulfilled.
But one weekend, Brittany met someone who would change her life forever. Up-and-coming songwriter, Jabri Cockney.
I'm Jabri.
Hey, I'm Brittany.
It's nice to meet you, Brittany. I mean, forgive me for staring, but you're the most beautiful girl I've seen all night.
Jabri was very, very handsome, very attractive.
Hailing from Harlem, Jabri wasn't just dashing, he was also ambitious.
He grew up in a similar circumstance in a neighborhood that didn't have as much promise as he had hoped. But he was able to rise above that. He ended up becoming a songwriter. He wrote for acts such as New Edition, as well as Ryan Leslie.
For Brittany, one look at Jabri and she was hooked.
Brittany Smith falls for Jabri.
The son of a retired New York City police officer, Jabri was exactly the man Brittany felt she needed. He had a warm smile, a smooth style, and was a hometown celebrity.
He was charismatic. He made her feel good. And at the end of the day, what girl doesn't want to feel good?
Jabri visited Brittany nearly every week at Harvard. By her senior year, they were inseparable.
Hey.
What's up, baby?
She decided that she wanted to let him move into her dorm room and, you know, him be her everything.
Since Jabri wasn't a Harvard student, Brittany had to keep their living arrangement in the Lowell House dorm a secret. But all the sneaking around was well worth the effort.
And a place where it's very easy to feel invisible, she became very important to him.
Living with the love of her life and just 2 weeks away from a Harvard degree, Brittany Smith's life seemed perfect.
She had a great boyfriend. She had a great education. She was finishing her education, and she had so much promise. The world was her oyster.
But then, May 18th, 2009, a terrifying shooting sends shockwaves through Harvard's campus. That afternoon, Brittany's due to meet a friend to shop for graduation dresses.
Hey, Brittany, it's me. I'm standing outside of your dorm. Where are you? Give me a call back.
After several hours, Brittany's still a no-show. It's an unusual move, especially for someone like her.
Brittany's nowhere to be found. It wasn't like Brittany not to answer her phone.
Given the mysterious shooting that just took place on Harvard's campus, friends fear the worst. But who is the victim in this horrifying shooting? And is it possible these two seemingly unrelated events are bound together in blood?
Don't pull a gun out if you're not about to use it. Go, 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 go.
In May 2009, Harvard senior Brittany Smith and boyfriend Jabri Cockney had all the makings of a beautiful life together.
She had a great relationship with someone that she really loved and trusted. She was 2 weeks away from graduating from the most prestigious university in the world. Everything was in front of her.
But on May 18th, Brittany went missing, leaving friends worried about her well-being. At the same time, police swarm Harvard's campus following a shooting inside the Kirkland House dormitory.
Can you tell me what happened? What did you see?
We just came from class. We noticed a guy come out of the Kirkland dorm right there, holding his stomach, bleeding.
Speaking to witnesses on the scene, they learned students had seen men fleeing the area moments after the shooting.
Was there anybody with him? Was anybody following him, chasing him?
There were 3 black males.
3 black males, okay.
One of the witnesses said when they saw 3 people run away from the scene of the crime, one was wearing an orange jacket.
The guy who got shot, have you ever seen him anywhere else around campus?
I've seen him before, just like in passing with class and stuff. I think his name's Justin.
Justin.
Detectives ultimately identified the victim as 21-year-old Justin Cosby. They reach out to Justin's family and inform them of his injuries.
I was completely devastated. I was in a state of shock.
Barely hanging on, Justin has been rushed into surgery.
I asked the doctor, was he gonna die? And the doctor told me he could not promise that he wouldn't. I couldn't believe I was hearing him say that.
Even after surgery, Justin's wounds may be too severe to overcome.
Justin had been shot in the stomach, but the bullet had traveled towards his heart. Each time the blood pressure rised, then it dropped again. And I kept looking at the monitor until the monitor flatlined. And at the point of flatline, I just lost it.
Sorry, man, we're gonna need you to step out.
What's going on? Look,
I'm sorry, we're gonna need you to leave.
After frantic attempts to save his life, at 4 a.m., doctors pronounced Justin Cosby dead.
I just could not believe my son had actually died. This is my baby.
But who was Justin Cosby, and what could have sparked his terrible death? That evening, detectives sit down with Justin's mother to try and pinpoint a motive.
How long was Justin going to Harvard?
He's not a student at Harvard.
He's not a student at Harvard?
Justin was a student at Salem State University.
Justin was studying business administration, and he was also looking to study computer science.
He was so full of ambition, hope, life.
But what exactly was Justin doing on Harvard's campus that day? Questioning students, it doesn't take long for police to find one possible answer.
Justin supplemented his income by selling small amounts of marijuana to Harvard students.
Was it possible drugs had played some role in Justin's death? It seems plausible, but no one can imagine any of his regular customers were behind his violent death.
Everyone liked Justin, and he seemed to be pretty cool with just about everybody.
Detectives decide to pull Justin's phone records. Combing through his call log, they make a stunning discovery.
The last contact that he had was with Brittany Smith.
But Justin's friends and family have never heard of Brittany Smith.
They tried to contact her several times, and she didn't return any of their phone calls.
Is it possible Brittany's recent disappearance and Justin's murder are somehow connected?
Brittany Smith was the last person that he spoke with, according to the phone records. This makes one wonder, where is she? Is she a victim? Is she a suspect? At this point, it becomes a question of her safety.
Fearing the worst, detectives race across campus to Brittany's dorm room to conduct a welfare check.
The police went possibly looking for a body because she was missing.
Britt?
The knocks to Brittany's door go unanswered.
Brittany?
With help from the dorm's RA, police gain entry.
Once they opened the dorm room, there was absolutely nothing out of place. Everything was perfect.
It's all right to me. Yeah, I don't see anything wrong.
They said, this can't be a place of interest for us.
They kept going back to her room to look for her, and she wasn't there.
With one person dead, Brittany officially missing, and 3 potential suspects on the run, this investigation is growing more sinister and mysterious by the minute. But as detectives race to connect the dots, they'll soon uncover a startling new piece of evidence, along with a twisted trail leading back to the gates of Harvard's most famous rival, Yale University. It's now been hours since neighboring student Justin Cosby was gunned down at Harvard University. It's a crime that's rocked the campus and surrounding community and sent police on a desperate search for 22-year-old Brittany Smith.
Her phone number was the last phone number in Justin's phone. So that's a part of the mystery. Why is it that she's not answering her phone? Why is it that she haven't come back to the dorm?
Unsure if Brittany is also a victim or could somehow be involved in the murder of Justin Cosby, investigators decide to pay a visit to their counterparts at the Harvard University Police Department. Speaking to officers, they learn every student that enters a dormitory has to scan their school ID.
The police checked the Kirkland House security records. They discovered that Brittany's card had been swiped several times around the time of the murder.
But as police already know, Brittany lived in Lowell House, on the other side of campus from the dorm where Justin Cosby was shot. Still, there's no denying that someone did use her card to gain entry to the building that day.
Her card had been used so many times, so that's a little bit suspicious.
Given the circumstances, police decide to execute a search warrant on the Lowell House dormitory where Brittany lives. This seemingly routine search turns up something very unusual.
Well, 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 looky here.
Can I get a picture?
In one of the closets, they find an orange and black varsity Letterman's jacket that looks just like the jacket that was described by witnesses earlier who saw 3 men leaving the scene of the crime.
It's a startling discovery.
Got a bag we can take this in?
But detectives still don't know who the jacket belongs to or if it's an exact match.
Take a closer look at that.
After sending the jacket to the lab for processing, police expand their search to adjoining dorm rooms on the hunch that possibly another student used Brittany's card to gain entrance to the Kirkland dorm. It isn't long before they make another stunning discovery inside the nearby room of student Catherine Wilson.
Hey, look over here.
What you got?
It's loaded.
Loaded? I can see CSI in here.
It's a loaded 9mm handgun, the same caliber as the bullets recovered from Justin Cosby's body. But when detectives ask Catherine about the gun, they get more questions than answers.
Catherine, why did we find a gun underneath your bed?
I have no idea what you're talking about. You found a gun under my bed?
It's not your gun.
I don't own a gun.
Catherine says she typically leaves her door unlocked and that someone must have stashed it there while she was out.
Why's your door unlocked?
This is Harvard campus. It's a safe place.
To detectives, it seems like Catherine's telling the truth, so they press her about the other women on her floor, one in particular.
You think Brittany might be involved?
Brittany? No way. She would never be involved in something like this.
But if Brittany's blockmate can't fathom Brittany killing Justin, then who had? One possible clue lay at the bottom of the bag that contained the pistol.
The police did find 2 IDs.
Those IDs belong to students from Yale.
I don't know those guys.
You don't know those guys?
No.
But what do 2 Yale students have to do with a murder on Harvard's campus? There's only one way to find out. Police bring Josh Bowman and Adam Cobb in for questioning. Detectives start with Josh.
How would you explain the fact is that we found your ID in a bag with a gun at Harvard?
When police confronted about why they found his ID at Harvard, he revealed a news story.
From what I know, she runs Harvard.
The next weekend, he and his friend Adam drove down to New York to seal the deal.
He traveled to Grand Central Station to meet with Jabrai.
But when they arrived, Jabrai claimed he'd left some of the money at his Harlem apartment.
The 3 then traveled back to Jabrai's apartment to get the rest of the money. And Blaine Jiggets, or as he was introduced to the 2 of them, Bat Boy, was waiting for them. And they robbed the 2 Yale students of their 3 pounds of marijuana and take their IDs as well.
Josh's story is a revelation. But is it possible Josh's statement is simply a ploy to steer investigators away from himself? When detectives question Josh's friend Adam, he tells the same story. With no evidence to hold them, police decide to release Josh and Adam later that day. Faced with another dead end, police are still struggling to answer 2 key questions. Where is Brittany Smith? And who killed Justin Cosby? With a list of suspects growing longer by the day and ranging from street-level drug dealers to Ivy League preppies, police can't rule out any possibility.
The first thing that would come into play is this is a turf war. And if this is a turf war, we're gonna end up in a very bad situation.
Harvard senior Brittany Smith thought she'd met the man of her dreams when Jabrai Cockney walked into her life. But their 2 lives took an unexpected turn when Brittany went missing following the shooting death of 21-year-old Justin Cosby.
Brittany is the last person to be contacted. And after the police tried to reach Brittany, she went AWOL. She could not be found.
Adding to the mystery is the fact police have recovered a suspicious jacket from Brittany's dorm room, a room she secretly shares with boyfriend Jabrai, and a loaded handgun was found in a nearby room. When coupled with the statement of a student drug dealer from Yale, detectives are beginning to wonder if there's more to the relationship between Brittany's boyfriend Jabrai and her best friend Shaniqua Campbell. Namely that Jabrai and Shaniqua might be partners in the campus drug trade and are behind the Cosby murder as well as Brittany's disappearance.
Shaniqua sold ecstasy and cocaine and all sorts of drugs and was well known as a drug dealer on campus.
Shaniqua is pretty sneaky. She is the cornerstone of this whole problem.
Police decide it's time to bring Shaniqua down to the station and press her for some answers.
Let's start by telling us where you were May 19th. Do you remember?
I was taking a filing exam.
Shaniqua Campbell was really irritated that the police were asking her questions in regards to Justin's murder.
According to Shaniqua, the only thing she knows about Justin is his reputation on campus.
He sold weed. Everybody knew that.
Well, word is, you may sling a little weed. Is that true?
Sometimes.
So did y'all like have the same supplier, have the same clients?
We don't discuss that.
At first, Shaniqua seems to be telling the truth, but it's what Shaniqua says about her connection to Jabri Copney that rings false.
When police asked Shaniqua Campbell if she knew Jabri, she said yes, but only through her friend Brittany Smith.
Shaniqua says she barely knew Jabri, let alone ever smoked any dope with him. As for Brittany, Shaniqua claims she hasn't seen her friend in days. To police, it all sounds pretty fishy. But with no evidence linking Shaniqua to Justin's murder or Brittany's disappearance, detectives are forced to let her go. But when police ask Brittany about the whereabouts of her boyfriend, Jabri Copney, Brittany denies knowing anyone by that name.
Tell me about Jabri.
Who's Jabri?
Your boyfriend, Jabri?
I don't know anyone by that name.
What are you talking about? Jabri who? I have absolutely no idea who this person is, which would throw up a red flag.
Police had asked Brittany who her boyfriend was, and she had told them it was a boy named Jordan Coombs who lived in South Carolina.
So you don't know Jabri at all?
No.
Police can tell Brittany is hiding something. Is it the fact that her boyfriend and best friend were potentially involved in a murder?
Brittany really loved Jabri and lied to police.
But until Brittany opens up to police, there's little they can do to move the investigation forward. So detectives turn to Brittany's friends, hoping to learn a little bit more about her and Jabri's relationship. It seems Jabri had been enjoying all the perks of an Ivy League education, courtesy of Brittany and her electronic ID card.
It was basically like a vacation. You know, he had meals there, he had a place to stay, he was using all the gym, the cafeteria, he had a dorm to stay in. He got to go to Harvard without having to pay any tuition.
But according to Brittany's friends, like so many other legitimate Harvard undergrads, Jabri started his own small business while on campus. Though Jabri's startup wasn't exactly legal.
Copney had in fact set up a little gang from which he planned robberies, he sold drugs, all right on the Harvard campus, in the dormitory.
Brittany's friends tell investigators the drug dealing wasn't the only reason they didn't think too highly of Jabri.
Brittany and Jabri led a tumultuous relationship.
There's no record of anybody talking positively about their relationship. In fact, people saw them fighting.
Jabri was a very jealous individual.
And apparently, when it came to Brittany's past, friends claimed Jabri could get downright nasty.
Copney told her to get rid of the stuffed animals and the framed pictures of a previous relationship that she was in. Brittany then decided to hide these underneath her blockmate, Catherine's bed.
It's the same bed where police had just recovered a loaded gun and 2 IDs, which begs the question, did Brittany know about the handgun? And whose was it? Jabri's, Shaniqua's, or hers? Hoping to use this new information to get a better handle on Brittany's alibi, investigators head to Boston's South Bus Station. Pulling surveillance footage from the day of the shooting, officers spot Brittany boarding a bus bound for New York that evening. But Brittany wasn't traveling alone.
When they pull the tapes, they're shocked to find that Brittany did not go home alone. They find that she had purchased 3 other tickets as well as her own.
Could Brittany's entourage be the same 3 men witnesses had seen fleeing the scene of Justin Cosby's fatal shooting? If so, where are they now? As police intensify their manhunt, a shocking confession will finally reveal a twisted secret and a motive for murder. From the outside looking in, Brittany Smith and Jabri Copney's love affair looked like a fairy tale. But following the murder of 21-year-old Justin Cosby, police have discovered that Jabri was dealing drugs on the Harvard campus, and the couple's relationship was far from ideal.
Jabri was very bossy to Brittany. He had a temper, and he ordered her around.
But just how far will Brittany go to protect the man she loves? A surveillance video taken on the day of the Cosby shooting shows Brittany boarding a bus with 3 other men.
Brittany bought 4 bus tickets, and they all boarded the bus together, and they went off to New York City.
Police quickly ID one of the men in the video, Jabri Copney.
At that point, the police realized that Brittany had been lying to them about everything.
Brittany has turned an already bad situation into a worse situation. Because she lied to the police, now she becomes a suspect and not necessarily just a person of interest.
With Brittany refusing to tell the truth, police know it'll be hard to pin this crime on Jabri and his 2 associates. Fortunately, they received the lab results on the orange and black Letterman jacket found in Brittany's room.
The forensic evidence showed that there was gunpowder on that jacket.
When they test the residue, they find that it also matches the residue found on the body of Justin.
They found gunpowder in it from the same weapon that was on the Catherine's bed. How coincidental.
The jacket, the loaded 9mm, the surveillance footage fleeing to New York City. The only things still missing are Jabri and his crew. But then, on May 21st, much to the surprise of investigators, Jabri Copney walks into the Cambridge Police Department and surrenders.
Jabri actually turns himself in once he realizes that the police have a plethora of evidence against him.
Interviewing Jabri, detectives soon learn the identities of the 2 other men in the surveillance video.
It was me, my man Fat Boy, and then it was Jason.
The men Jabri is referring to are Jason Aquino and Blaine Fat Boy Jiggets.
Blaine Jiggets and Jason Aquino were actually childhood friends, and they grew up together.
Basically, they wanted me to do a job for him, help him rob some marijuana from this Justin cat.
The Justin cat Jabri is talking about is Justin Cosby. But according to Jabri, the trio's plan to rob Justin went horribly from the get-go.
Jabri, Jason, and Blaine lured Justin into the basement of the Kirkland house. When they were in the basement, they demanded that Justin show them the weed. Justin showed them the weed. They tried to take it from him.
They began to scuffle because Justin wasn't gonna let go of the marijuana without getting paid. Somewhere during the scuffle, Justin was shot 1 time.
It's an incredible story, but Jabri's adamant he didn't pull the trigger.
Out of nowhere, Fat Boy pulls a gun out, pops him.
So Fat Boy had the gun?
Yeah.
Armed with this information, police arrest Jason Aquino and Blaine Jiggets in New York City and charge the trio with Justin's murder. On March 16, 2010, Brittany Smith is arrested and charged with accessory after the fact, illegal possession of a firearm, and willfully misleading a police officer. The arrest rocks the Harvard community.
When I found out that the killer was not a Harvard student, yet he was staying at Harvard, using all of Harvard's amenities, and he had staged this robbery and had set up my son, I was flabbergasted.
As is the university. 2 weeks before their graduation, Brittany, as well as her friend Shaniqua Campbell, are expelled for their alleged drug use and potential involvement in Justin's murder.
I couldn't imagine having a free ride at an Ivy League university and ruining, graduating, and going on with my life to do great things over a crime 2 weeks before I graduate.
But even after her arrest, it's clear Brittany's love for Jabri trumps any doors a Harvard degree could have opened up for her.
They're writing each other, and she wanted to marry him at some point, which is shocking.
On April 6, 2011, nearly 2 years after the shooting, Jabri Copney's murder trial begins in Woburn, Massachusetts. With Brittany refusing to turn on him, Jabrai enters the courtroom looking cool, collected, and confident he'll walk out a free man.
I just wanted to go over there and wring his freaking neck. But I knew that would not bring my son back.
In their opening statements, prosecutors assert that on May 18, 2009, Jabrai Copney, Blaine Jiggets, and Jason Aquino conspired to rob Justin Cosby.
Justin had come to Harvard to sell some marijuana to someone he thought was a student there. And it was a large quantity.
Jabrai contacted Justin to purchase marijuana. Justin was lured down into Kirkland House.
Justin was not a big drug dealer. Apparently, he thought he could make some quick money.
So, homeboy, you got that for me?
Yeah, I got that. You got that for me?
Yeah, you ain't gonna see it until I see what I need to see, partner.
All right. You wanna see us here? What's up? Where the money at?
They tried to take the marijuana from him, so he put up a fight.
Give me the bag. You pulling it out like you about to leave? You ain't about to do nothing with it. You're not about to take this bag from me.
And at that point, Jabrai Copney shot him.
Don't pull a gun out if you're not about to use it. If you're not about to use it, don't pull it out. You ain't gonna do that for it. Oh, it's counting. Go.
After the shooting, the three men immediately went back to Brittany's room, and Jabrai Copney told Brittany to hide the gun.
Prosecutors say Brittany, fueled by her love for Jabrai, did exactly as she was told. She hid the gun in the dorm room next to hers and fled on a bus with the three men back to New York.
Brittany was totally in this up to her neck. She provided the venue, the place where she allowed her boyfriend to come with his friends and load a gun in her room.
But without corroborating testimony, the state's case is largely circumstantial. Prosecutors give Brittany one last chance to come clean.
The prosecutor said, "You'd do anything to help Jabrai join Copney, wouldn't you?" And Brittany replied, "I've already tried everything and it failed. And now we're here."
That's what people do when they're in love. You do things for people that you're in love with that you wouldn't typically do.
Fortunately for prosecutors, Brittany's friend Shaniqua isn't quite so love-struck.
The deal that Shaniqua took was that she wouldn't be prosecuted if she gave the police truthful information about the crime.
Taking the stand, Shaniqua admits she regularly sold drugs at Harvard and was well aware of her competition, Justin Cosby.
Shaniqua was the one that apparently suggested to Jabrai to set up Justin, as she thought he would be an easy target.
Shaniqua says Jabrai agreed. It's an explosive revelation, but it pales in comparison to what Shaniqua reveals next.
Was your relationship strictly business, selling weed as it were?
In the beginning it was, but after a while, we were smoking weed, but anytime we smoked weed, it led to other things.
It came out that Shaniqua had actually been sleeping with Jabrai.
That was probably really hard for Brittany to swallow, that her best friend was sleeping with her boyfriend.
The love relationship between Brittany and Jabrai was one-sided. Brittany loved Jabrai. She would do whatever she could to help him. Jabrai's love to Brittany, or what she experienced the love, was really just something for his own benefit.
But in cross, Jabrai's defense attorneys argue Shaniqua can't be trusted as a witness. Not only had she been quick to cooperate with police to avoid prosecution, she also had a long history of unscrupulous behavior.
Shaniqua was feeling some sort of infringement on her business because of Justin. And there was some manipulation on her part to actually get Justin out of the business a bit.
As for the actual shooting, Jabrai's attorneys argue that Blaine Fatboy Jiggets was the real trigger man.
The defense was that the actual shooter was Blaine Jiggets.
With everyone in the case pointing their fingers at each other, some observers wonder if the defense may have sown the seeds of reasonable doubt. But prosecutors still have one more witness left to call, and what she says will send shockwaves through the courtroom. Inside a Woburn, Massachusetts courtroom, prosecutors have asserted Jabrai Copney murdered Justin Cosby in a robbery gone awry, and then used his girlfriend, Harvard senior Brittany Smith, as a pawn to conceal his crime and hide the evidence.
Things like this just don't happen at an Ivy League school.
While Jabri's defense attorneys don't dispute his involvement in the crime, they argue Jabri's pal, Blaine Fatboy Jiggets, is the real triggerman. With so many fingers pointing in so many directions, a not guilty verdict seems like a done deal. That is until prosecutors call a state forensic expert to the stand. She tells the jury that a DNA swab of the murder weapon had indeed come back positive.
We were actually able to obtain a full DNA profile.
And who was that profile of, please?
It matched the defendant.
They did find that Copney's DNA was on the gun.
It's a damning piece of evidence, erasing any and all doubt as to just who murdered Justin Cosby.
Jabri, he's the person that actually pulled the trigger. DNA doesn't lie. And his DNA was found on the weapon.
On April 22, 2011, jurors retired to deliberate Jabri Copney's fate. Hours later, they returned with the verdict: guilty.
He's sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
When he shot my son in the belly, it should have been a double murder rap, because that shot went straight to my heart, and it killed me also. I hope he never sees the light of day again.
6 months later, Brittany Smith pleads guilty to being an accessory after the fact, illegal possession of a firearm, willfully misleading a grand jury, and willfully misleading a police officer. She is sentenced to 3 years in prison.
Brittany really got a slap on the wrist. She was really the nucleus of this whole catastrophe.
If Brittany had owned up to her part in the beginning and told the truth, that she probably would not be in jail right now.
For his role in the murder, Blaine Jiggets receives a sentence of 9 to 12 years in prison. Jason Aquino receives 18 to 20 years. Despite her alleged involvement in Justin's murder, Shaniqua herself manages to avoid prison time.
Shaniqua really orchestrated all this thing. She's the one that was sleeping with Jabri, yet she's the one that turned, and the prosecution said, "We want your testimony. You get no time."
While it's a verdict Justin's family still struggles with, they're not the only ones who lost out in this tragedy. For Brittany Smith, a young woman with so much promise, her blind love for a bad man ultimately cost her a life many aspire to, yet few can attain: the prestigious life of a bona fide Harvard graduate.
Brittany had her whole life in front of her, and Jabri did nothing but weigh that down. She could have dated anyone she wanted to, but she chose Jabri, and no one knows why, and that's something that she will regret for the rest of her life.
The Architects of Deception, a novelization of shadow lives and stolen identities. Prologue, The Mask. The mirror does not lie, but the man staring into it does. In the soft glow of a California morning, 1979, the man who called himself Dr. Gerald Barnes adjusted his stethoscope. It was a prop, though a functional one. To the world, it was a symbol of healing, of authority, of a life dedicated to the preservation of pulse and breath. To Gerald Barnbaum, it was the final piece of a costume he had been perfecting since he left Chicago in a cloud of disgrace. He liked the weight of the lab coat, It had a specific stiffness, a clinical white that suggested purity. He practiced his doctor's smile and the glass warm, reassuring, just the right amount of paternal concern. He wasn't just a pharmacist with a revoked license anymore. He was an actor who had found the role of a lifetime, and the stage was the Pacific Southwest Medical Group. 400 miles away, the real Dr. Gerald Barnes was waking up in Stockton, unaware that his name, his hard-earned credentials, and his very soul had been harvested by a ghost. Chapter 1, The Assistant's Shadow. Rick D'Alessandro liked his boss. That was the problem. In the busy hallways of the Orange County Clinic, Dr. Barnes was a breath of fresh air. He was a likable little guy. As Rick would often describe him, quick with a joke, easy to talk to, and possessed of a charismatic energy that made patients feel better before he even examined them. Morning, Rick, Barnes said, breezing past the reception desk with a stack of charts. Beautiful day to save some lives, isn't it? Rick smiled, checking the clipboard. We've got a full house, Doc, 25 scheduled, and the walk-ins are already lining up. The more the merrier, Barnes replied, his eyes twinkling behind scholarly spectacles. Rick watched him go, a small frown creeping onto his face. There was something about the way Barnes handled the more complex cases, a certain hesitation, a reliance on routine prescriptions. But in a high-volume clinic, efficiency was king. Barnes was efficient. He was the director. He was the man with the answers. Or so everyone thought. Chapter 2, The December Chill. December 26, 1979. The holiday spirit was a fading echo, replaced by the gray reality of a winter morning. John Mackenzie walked into the clinic, and even from across the room, Rick could see the man was vibrating with exhaustion. At 29, Mackenzie should have been in the prime of his life, but he looked like a candle guttering in the wind. His skin was sallow, his eyes sunken, and his gait was unsteady. I don't feel right, Rick, Mackenzie whispered, his voice dry as parchment. Thirsty, so thirsty, and dizzy. It's like the floor won't stay still. Rick ushered him into exam room 3. The doctor will see you in a moment. John, hang in there. When Barnes entered the room, he didn't see a man on the brink of a diabetic coma. He saw a script to be followed. He listened to the complaints: excessive urination, dry mouth, the loss of equilibrium, inner ear disturbance. Barnes pronounced with the practiced ease of a veteran clinician. A touch of vertigo happens after the holiday stress, diet, the usual. He scribbled on a pad, an anti-vertigo drug, something to stop the spinning. But the thirst, Doc, Mackenzie asked, clutching a paper cup of water like it was a holy relic. Your body is reacting to the imbalance, Barnes said, patting him on the shoulder. Take the pills. We'll run some blood work just to be safe, but you'll be fine by New Year's. Barnes sent him home. He didn't check for the sweet scent of ketones on the man's breath. He didn't notice the classic signs of a body eating itself. He had 39 other patients to see. He had a role to play, and John Mackenzie was just a bit player in the grand drama of Gerald Barnbaum's ego. Chapter 3, 1200. The lab results came back the next day. Dr. Barnes was off, enjoying the perks of his stolen prestige. Rick D'Alessandro was the one who opened the folder. He expected the usual slightly elevated cholesterol, maybe a minor infection. Instead, he saw a number that made his heart stop. Glucose, 1,200 milligrams DL. Normal was 80 to 100. 1,200 was a death sentence. It was a level so high the blood was practically syrup. Oh, God, Rick whispered. He didn't wait for a supervisor. He didn't wait for Barnes. He grabbed the phone and dialed Mackenzie's number. Ring, ring, ring. No answer. He called the emergency contact Tan ex-wife. She hadn't seen him. He called the other numbers on the chart. Silence. A cold dread settled in Rick's stomach. He looked at the chart again. Barnes had prescribed an anti-vertigo medication. He had sent a man an active, acute diabetic crisis home with a pill for dizziness. I need the police. Rick told the dispatcher, his voice trembling, "Garden Grove PD, we have a patient. I think he's in danger." Chapter 4, The Kitchen Floor. The officers broke the door in. The apartment was quiet, the air heavy with the stillness of a life interrupted. They found John Mackenzie in the kitchen. He was lying on the floor, his body cold, his eyes staring at a ceiling he couldn't see. In his hand, clutched tightly like a failed talisman, was the prescription Dr. Barnes had given him. The anti-vertigo drug. The 29-year-old had collapsed into a coma and died alone. His body starving for insulin while he followed the expert advice of a man who didn't know the difference between a balance disorder and a metabolic catastrophe. When Rick heard the news, the grief was quickly overtaken by a burning, incandescent rage. A doctor might make a mistake, but this felt like a void where knowledge should have been. Rick sat in the quiet of the empty clinic that evening. He looked at the framed diploma on Barnes's wall. He looked at the medical board registration. Something felt hollow. Something felt wrong. He picked up the phone and called the medical board in Sacramento. "I need to verify the identity of a Dr. Gerald Barnes," Rick said. "Could you fax over his identification photo and file?" The fax machine hummed to life. The paper slid out, inch by agonizing inch. Rick watched as the image formed. The man in the photo was older, different features, a different bone structure. The address listed was in Stockton, 400 miles away. Rick looked at the photo, then at the empty chair in the director's office. "You're not him," Rick whispered to the shadows. "Who the hell are you?" Chapter 5. The Pharmacist of Chicago. The investigation into the man who would be king of the clinic revealed a history built on layers of deception. Before he was Dr. Barnes, he was Gerald Barnbaum. In Chicago, he had been a pharmacist. A man who understood the chemistry of medicine, but lacked the ethics of it. He had been caught in a Medicaid scam, a greedy little grift that cost him his license. But Barnbaum was a performer. He had been a theater student in college. He knew how to project a character. If he couldn't be a pharmacist, he would be something better, something more powerful. He had called the medical board, posing as the real Dr. Barnes. He told them he had lost his duplicate license and was opening a clinic in Los Angeles. They, trusting the name and the professional tone, mailed him the credentials without a second thought. It was that easy. A phone call, a lie, and a white coat. On August 8th, 1980, the curtain finally fell. The police arrived not to discuss a patient, but to escort the leading man to a cell. The charge: practicing medicine without a license. And, more importantly, manslaughter. But as Gerald Barnbaum sat in the back of the cruiser, he wasn't crying. He was already thinking about his next role. Chapter 6, the second act. Prison was supposed to be the end of the story. For the family of John Mackenzie, 3 years felt like a slap in the face. For the real Dr. Barnes, the damage to his name was a wound that wouldn't heal. But Gerald Barnbaum was a man of habit. 18 months later, he was out on good behavior. He walked out of the prison gates, looked at the California sun, and realized he didn't know how to be anyone else. He didn't go back to Chicago. He didn't find a trade. He went to a different city, found a different clinic, and put on a different white coat. He became Dr. Gerald Barnes again. He even got married. Lisa Roberts thought she had found the perfect husband. He was a doctor, a provider, a romantic who showered her with flowers and took her to concerts. He earned a 6-figure salary. He was the medical director of a Los Angeles facility. I'm so proud of you, Gerald, she would say as she kissed him goodbye in the morning. It's all for you, darling, he would reply. He lived this life for years. He saw patients. He ordered tests. He performed physicals for FBI agents. He was so good at the role that even the government's premier law enforcement agency didn't check the credentials of the man sticking a tongue depressor into their throats. Until a Christmas party in 1996, Rick D'Alessandro was there. He had moved on with his life, but he never forgot the face of the man who killed John Mackenzie. He was standing near the punch bowl when he saw a familiar, likable little guy wearing a name tag. "Hi, I'm Dr. Barnes." The world stopped. Rick felt the blood rush to his ears. It had been 16 years, but the mask was identical. "Hi, Rick," the man said, his voice as smooth as silk. "How are you doing?" Rick stared at him, his fists clenching. "Well, Gerald, I'm not doing too well, because you're doing the same thing you did back in the 70s. The doctor didn't flinch. He gave a small, sad smile. "Well, you know, Rick, this is all just a big mistake." He walked away, disappeared into the crowd, and then disappeared from the city. But the FBI was now on the trail. Chapter 7, The Highway Ghost. While Barnbaum was a predator of the clinic, a different kind of architect was emerging in the heart of the Midwest. David Brankel didn't wear a white coat. He wore expensive suits. He drove a black BMW. He was a businessman, a developer, a man with a vision. In Bloomington, Indiana, Brankel was the man to know. He rented an office from Phil and Bonnie Sperry, claiming to run an architectural and construction firm called ACR. Architecture, construction. And what's the R for, David? Phil Sperry asked one afternoon over coffee. Brankel smiled, a smooth, practiced expression that reached his eyes but didn't warm them. Results, Phil. Always results. But the R stood for robbery. Brankel was a man of dualities. Sunday through Wednesday, he was a family man in Vincennes, living in a rented house with a wife and a young son. Thursday through Saturday, he was a ghost on the interstate. He would drive his black BMW, a car he couldn't afford, to grocery store banks, tucked inside Winn-Dixies and Meejers. He used a simple disguise. A fishing hat, a mustache, a pair of tan coveralls. He would walk up to the teller and hand over a note. "I have a gun. Be quiet. Go home alive." He was efficient. He was calm. He was the interstate bank mart bandit IBM, and he was driving a path of financial destruction across 6 states. He had an accomplice, a woman named Donna Humans. She was the Bonnie to his Clyde, a waitress he met at a club who fell for the thrill and the dapper suits. She sat in the idling BMW while David walked into the stores, a scanner in his hand, listening to the police frequencies. He was playing a game with the world. He was the successful entrepreneur by day and the most prolific bank robber in the region by night. He believed he was smarter than the detectives, smarter than the FBI, and certainly smarter than the people he scammed. Chapter 8, Operation Intercept. Detective Larry Duncan of the Louisville Metro Police was a man of maps. He sat in his office, staring at a cluster of pins that traced the path of the IBM bandit. Indianapolis, Louisville, Cincinnati. The pins followed the interstates like a trail of breadcrumbs. He's using the highways as his veins, Duncan muttered to his colleagues, Joe Schley and Agent Freihofer. He jumps on the I-65 or the I-71. And he's gone before the first cruiser arrives. Duncan had a theory. The bandit wasn't just a criminal, he was a commuter. He was likely based in Indiana, traveling out to hit targets and returning to his safe zone. In 2003, Duncan launched Operation Intercept. He placed undercover officers inside 5 target banks. He coordinated with 1,200 officers across the city. The trap was set. On September 6th, the IBM bandit struck hit number 35. The radio crackled. Operation Intercept. Operation Intercept. The call was too loud, too frantic. David Brankel, sitting in his BMW with the scanner hissing in his ear, heard the panic in the officer's voice. He didn't head for the interstate. He took the back roads. He slipped through the residential streets, weaving like a snake through the tall grass of the suburbs. Duncan watched the black sedan vanish on the horizon of his map. "He's gone," Duncan said, leaning back in his chair. "He's listening. He's always listening. Chapter 9, The Final Curb. Luck is a finite resource. For David Brankel, it ran out on a stretch of Highway 45 in December 2003. He was driving too fast. He was always driving too fast. He cut off a vehicle, nearly sending it into oncoming traffic. Unfortunately for Brankel, the man behind the wheel was Bloomington Detective Kevin Hill. The chase that followed was a symphony of screaming tires and 100-mile-per-hour desperation. Brankel disregarded stop signs. He ran people off the road. He was a man who had built a life on the belief that he could never be caught. And now the reality was catching up in his rearview mirror. He escaped the immediate pursuit, but he left behind a clue. He had dropped his license. Days later, in Vincennes, the Indiana State Police surrounded a house at 1919 Hickory. Brankel tried to run one last time. He abandoned his young son in the car of final, chilling testament to his narcissism, and fled on foot through an apartment complex. He tripped on a curb. The Interstate Bank Mart bandit, the man who had hit 43 banks and stolen $136,000, fell face first into the dirt. As Sergeant Greg Winkler clicked the handcuffs into place, a small knife fell out of Brankel's pocket. It just fell out. Brankel stammered, the smooth businessman gone, replaced by a shivering, pathetic figure. I wasn't going to hurt you. Chapter 10, The Interrogation Room. The two worlds of deception met in the cold fluorescent light of an interrogation room. In one city, Gerald Barnbaum was being sentenced to 12.5 years, weeping about his prostate cancer and his grandchildren, even as the judge warned that he would do it all again if given a chance. In Vincennes, David Brankel sat across from Larry Duncan. I'm the guy you're looking for, Brankel said, leaning forward as if he were about to offer a business deal. I'm the IBM bandit. Call Louisville. Call Cincinnati. They'll want to talk to me. For 6 hours, Brankel talked. He told them about the first robbery. He told them about Donna. He told them about his mother, who told him he couldn't even mow the lawn right. He was a man who wanted to be the most successful bank robber of all time because he couldn't be anything else. He showed no remorse for the people he had cheated, the Sperrys, the Logans. He claimed he did legitimate work for them. He was a sociopath who had absolute no conscience. Chapter 11, The FBI's Doctor. Murray Konjovsky, an FBI agent, stared at the file on her desk in disbelief. The irony was a bitter pill to swallow. The Bureau had a contract with a clinic in Los Angeles to perform employment physicals. For years, the man sitting in that office, the one who had checked the heartbeats and reflexes of over 100 FBI agents, was a man the government had already put behind bars. Gerald Barnbaum hadn't just fooled a clinic. He had fooled the premier investigative agency in the world. While the Bureau scrambled to assess the damage, Lisa Roberts sat in her living room, the space that used to be filled with the warmth of a loving husband. She now referred to him as the Never Was. I didn't know his real name. She whispered to the investigators. I didn't know his real age. Every night I shared a bed with a ghost. I trusted him with my life, my family, my future. Lisa realized that Barnbaum hadn't just stolen a name from a doctor in Stockton. He had stolen the years she could never get back. He had been a master of the mundane, playing the role of the devoted husband so convincingly that she never questioned why he never talked about his childhood or why he was so vague about his medical school days. Chapter 12, The Bus Ticket Blunder. In the world of bureaucracy, sometimes the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. After his 1996 conviction, Barnbaum was serving his time in a federal facility. In 2000, he was scheduled for a transfer because he had been categorized as a low-security inmate, decision that baffled Agent Konjovsky. The Bureau of Prisons didn't use a secure transport. They gave Gerald Barnbaum a bus ticket. They told him to report to a facility in Illinois. Barnbaum took the ticket, walked out of the prison gates, and immediately vanished. He didn't go to Illinois. He went back to the only life he knew how to live. A month later, U.S. Marshal Joseph Exner walked into a North Hollywood clinic. He had a hunch. He didn't look for a man in a jumpsuit. He looked for a man in a lab coat. Gerald Barnbaum. Exner called out. A man stepped out of an exam room. He was wearing a crisp white coat, the stethoscope draped around his neck. He looked at the marshals and smiled that practiced clinical smile. You guys are good, Barnbaum said, turning around to be handcuffed. He had been back on the job for weeks, seeing patients, prescribing controlled substances, and collecting a paycheck as Dr. Gerald Barnes. He was 63 years old, and he was already planning his next comeback. Chapter 13, The $9 Million Lesson. The fallout from Barnbaum's final act at Executive Health Group was catastrophic. Carl Jansen, an executive at Atlantic Richfield, had been one of Dr. Barnes's patients. He had undergone a full physical, including a prostate exam performed by a man with no medical training. I saw him on the evening news the next day. Jansen recalled, the disgust still evident in his voice. Handcuffs. The evening news. I had trusted this man with my health, my privacy. Jansen wasn't alone. Nearly 500 former patients joined a civil lawsuit. The evidence revealed a shocking lack of diligence. Executive Health Group hadn't performed even a basic background check. If they had, they would have seen the multiple felony convictions and the trail of dead and duped patients. The company was forced to settle for over $9 million. It was a price paid for greed and negligence, and it put the firm out of business. But for the victims, the money didn't erase the feeling of being violated by an imposter. Chapter 14, The Pet Store Dream. While Barnbaum was a ghost in the clinic, David Brankel was a predator in the pet store. In Vincennes, Alan and Becky Logan were the embodiment of the American dream. They ran Logan's Wet Pets and More, a beloved local institution. They wanted to expand, to build a family entertainment complex called Logan's Great Escape. When they met David Brankel, They thought their prayers had been answered. He looked like a gift from God, Becky remembered. He had the suits, the Vanguard Capital marketing materials, the timetables. He looked legit. Brankle charged them a $3,500 retainer and $500 a month. But his most chilling tactic involved his young son, Michael. On the first of every month, Brankle would walk into the pet store holding Michael's hand. He would have the boy hand the bill to Alan Logan. It was a prop, just like Barnbound's stethoscope. The presence of the child created an atmosphere of trust, a sense that Brankle was a family man just like them. It's sad, Alan said years later, he used that boy to rob us. He had no conscience. Brankle was living a triple life, the devoted father in Vincennes, the entrepreneur in Bloomington, and the serial bank robber on the interstate. He was a sociopath who viewed people as meal tickets, and he didn't care who he stepped on to fund his dapper lifestyle. Chapter 15, The Last Act. In 2004, the curtain finally closed, at least for a while. David Brankle received 21 years in federal prison for 43 counts of bank robbery. Donna Hewins, the waitress who became his getaway driver, received house arrest and probation. Brankle owed $175,000 in restitution, but for the Logans and the Sperrys, not a dime would ever return. Brankle maintained to the end that his work for them was legitimate. In Minnesota, at Vasica Federal Prison, Gerald Barnbaum, now in his 70s, sat in his cell. His projected release was 2018. Investigators who had tracked him for decades were not under any illusions. His age won't make a difference, one detective noted. He's a very dangerous human being. When he walks through those doors, he will be a physician again. He doesn't know how to be anyone else. The architects of deception had been dismantled, but their legacy remained in the lives they shattered and the trust they broke. They were men who proved that in a world of credentials and suits, a mask can be more powerful than the truth. As long as there is greed, and as long as there is a desire to believe in the perfect professional, there will be men like Barnbaum and Brankel waiting in the shadows, ready to put on the coat and start the show all over again. To be continued. Red Bones. Book 1 of the Shetland Mysteries. Prologue, The Wind and the Wire. The wind across the Shetland Islands did not blow. It howled. It was a living, breathing entity that tore off the North Sea, tasting of salt, ancient ice, and bitter secrets. It scoured the treeless hills of Bresse, rattling the corrugated iron roofs of the old crofts and bending the heather until it snapped. In the deep, suffocating darkness of a Tuesday night, Mima Wilson sat in her armchair, listening to it. The fire in the hearth had burned down to glowing peat embers, casting long, wavering shadows across the faded floral wallpaper. Mima was a woman carved from the landscape itself, weathered, unyielding, holding onto the land of her ancestors with a grip that neither time nor the desperate pleas of her own son could loosen. She pulled her thick whereupon shawl tighter around her frail shoulders. The clock on the mantelpiece ticked, a slow, methodical heartbeat in the silent room. Her gaze drifted to the window. Beyond the glass, the darkness was absolute, save for the faint, rhythmic sweep of the Bresse lighthouse cutting through the sea fret. Then another sound, a crunch of boots on the gravel outside. Mima froze. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the feral cats that sometimes sought shelter under the eaves. It was a heavy, deliberate step. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice raspy but firm. She wasn't a woman given to easy fright. She had lived through the war, through the treacherous nights of the Shetland bus, through the loss of her husband. Silence answered her. She slowly pushed herself up from the chair, her joints protesting. She moved toward the narrow hallway, her eyes darting to the old wooden cupboard where she kept the shotgun. It hadn't been fired in years, but the cold, heavy steel of it was a comfort she suddenly craved. "Is that you?" she called again, a sliver of uncertainty finally piercing her bravado. "Joseph?" The front door rattled. A shadow blocked the sliver of moonlight bleeding through the frosted glass. Mima's hand reached for the doorknob, hesitation warring with defiance. Then came the deafening roar. The glass shattered inward, a storm of jagged diamonds. The sheer force of the blast threw Mima backward, the world erupting into blinding white light and the sharp, metallic stench of curdite. She hit the floor, the sound of the wind rushing in through the broken door, mingling with the final, fading beat of her own heart. And then there was only the wind. Chapter 1, The Remains of the Morning. Detective Inspector Jimmy Perez woke to the sound of chaos. Dad! 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 The voice belonged to his stepdaughter, Cassie, and it carried the distinct, frantic pitch of a teenager who was about to miss the morning ferry. Jimmy groaned, burying his face in the pillow for a fleeting second before the reality of single parenthood dragged him upward. The air in the house was freezing. The ancient boiler had given up sometime in the night again. He stumbled out of bed, running a hand through his dark, unruly hair. "I'm up, Cass! I'm up!" He found her in the hallway, a whirlwind of school bags, half-eaten toast, and exasperation. She looked so much like her mother that sometimes it caught Jimmy off guard. A sharp pain beneath his ribs that he had learned to live with. "Have you got everything?" Jimmy asked, trying to inject some authority into his sleep-graveled voice. He picked up a stray mitten from the floor. "You got your gloves? Your homework?" Cassie spun around, her school tie hanging loose, glaring at the mitten as if it had personally offended her. "What do you think this is, Dad?" A fashion choice. It was Norse mythology this week. We had to build a longboat out of lolly sticks, and it's crumbling. "Right. Don't be cheeky," Jimmy muttered, helping her balance the fragile, glue-smeared wooden structure on top of her textbooks. "Just get your coat on." "Well, don't pretend like you're organized," she shot back, though there was a fond smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "We're 15 minutes late already.